Hi guys, I'm Katie Room from Periapsis Press, where I review indie sci-fi and fantasy. Today we are continuing our book club, reading through volume one, number one of Silence and Starsong, compiled by editor Joseph Knowles. And we will be discussing the seventh story, The Gamer by Nathan Carnes. If you're interested in joining my Discord and participating in this discussion in the future, you can reach out to me either on Twitter at RedHedgeDragon or through my website, periapsispress.com. Joining me today is Patrick from Cave to the Cross, Michael Kane, author of After Moses, and Hannah, an IRL friend and a member of my Discord. Okay, so I I was pretty disappointed, I think, by this story. And so I'm really interested to hear what everyone else thought. Uh, and um, Michael Kane actually mentioned in the Discord that this was probably going to be a difficult one to talk about in a lot of ways. It's not quite, it doesn't break down quite so easily into events, I feel like, the way that we've been talking about stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a meet the main character and then uh you kind of wait along until you meet the secondary character.
Well, w- this story has a lot of little ideas that ultimately kind of lead to one little twist at the end that it pretty heavily telegraphs is coming. But it's a lot of little ideas that are happening paragraph by paragraph by paragraph. It's not a plot story. It is almost setting up this setting and analyzing a little bit of this setting and how these two characters interact with this world in this way, and then it goes through its kind of twist idea, and then it's over. So it's not really like it's not there's not like a plot to tear into, if that makes sense. And I think that's probably partially why it's less likely to be anybody's favorite story out of this collection. But that's not to say that there's not an awful lot of thought that went into this story and some craftsmanship in there as well.
You do feel like the author at least understands he's built a world in his mind and input these characters in. It's not just uh written on the back of the napkin
Hmm.
type deal, just for the
Sure.
ending, like modern pubs do. I've got the twist. Now all I need is the story.
So we start with our character, who is just referred to as the gamer. Uh, he's described uh, piecemeal, right, as a traveler who has unique abilities. And the setting that we get dropped in is a mundane, and he sort of talks about it as being overly mundane to the point of being dull. Uh, it's a sort of a kind of westerny feel. Uh, at least that's the impression I got. Maybe because he put on a wide-brimmed hat at some point. Um, and it's implied that it's so dull that something catastrophically exciting is going to happen as a result. He's in town for a big race. He's his thing that he does is bet money on races. And this one uh, is using gliders down from a mountain. It's kind of cool,
Yeah,
but different.
not very
The
westerny.
I know I
But maybe gliders is like a steampunky or like future tech, like their gliders in their uh episode one type deal.
those are not gliders, but
Well, pod racers, but like if you had just the pod racers and a bunch of sand, you'd be like, oh, it's a western.
I suppose.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or Dune. It's either one.
Our main character is kind of an outsider. He's almost like a video game player, but
So how
without,
quick? I was about to say, how quickly are we really going to discuss the broader nature of the setting?
well, he kind of gets into it pretty quickly,
Right. You
right?
get it, you sort of get some of it quickly, but then you don't really understand the nature of the gamer until a bit
Right.
later.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's he's it's definitely a game of some sort. Its exact nature you don't really know. And because he arrives in this town and it's not like he's expecting like he understands everything that's going on. He's coming to bet on races, he knows that, but he's stepping in trying to figure out and understand and know what's going on. Like it's a repeated pattern that he comes to these towns, he bets on these races, and again, it's hard to talk about.
Right.
So this is really where
But he has agency, right? Like you feel like he's an
yes,
agent character.
yes,
And
he
and the
had he
term
ha-
the term gamer carries a lot of connotations that lead you in one direction or another.
and I think it actually takes you in a misleading direction here.
Yeah.
I think, right? Does that
So
make sense?
so in the world of Tron, I believe that he was
That
the
had to be. I knew that was going to be the one you likened it to.
I believe that he was the main character, not Tron himself.
And I haven't seen any, I have no context except for the
And
commercials.
I don't, and I'm going to say that I don't think you're right there. I think he's a type of NPC, and
Well,
we'll get
I
there.
think he is an NPC.
Okay. Is the main character was a
But
human sucked in though of Tron?
Well, but there's two of them. So Tron is
Oh my
right.
goodness, it's been so many years since I've seen like the original one.
Tron is the reference to a character who is the NPC who realizes
Right,
he's an NPC.
right.
Right.
You're right. So you okay? Yeah. So anyway,
yeah, I got the impression that he was an outsider with greater agencies slash abilities
yes,
than the people that he's interacting with.
yes.
But he doesn't really have a real world.
That's
That was
I
kind
believe
of
that is correct too.
the
That's
feel that
why
I
I had the
got.
feeling that he's almost like well, we'll have to get there later, but it's like the main character is an NPC, so a non-player controlled an aspect of the game that is aware of the rules of the game and has some agency within it. And so he calls himself and this other guy travelers, so insinuating that they can jump between these different worlds or existences or something, not quite knowing what they're doing, but are still themselves and still doing their thing. Like this gamer, he's a gambler, so he's coming into this town, and this was some of the neat part here because this went beyond because some of the ideas are specific to games, and other ideas were specific to storytelling. So he comes into this town, and the first place he goes is he's looking for an inn, okay, and he starts talking to the innkeeper. And he's going to be gambling on these races, and so he starts asking basically about the people that are going to be in the race. And you realize that what he's doing is he's trying to figure out what the plot of this world and this race are. What is the plot of this race? So as he's hearing about, oh, there's this, I don't really remember all the different racers, but there's this old veteran and there's this other guy, and then there's this new guy in town. Well, that's the last one. Oh, there's this kid with a
Yeah.
bad glider, this plucky young guy, and he's like, oh, that's really promising because in stories aren't by accident, right? And this gamer doesn't live in an accidental world, right?
He doesn't just know his genre, like he knows his tropes.
Right, right. So
He's like
he's looking for the plot so that he can bet on the plot and make money. Because again, stories follow patterns, things have meaning. It's not random. It's not a random world. It is a purposeful world. And so, he talks to this innkeeper, and I'm pretty sure he did settle on the it was the kid, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Before, yeah.
Right.
but he needed to figure out where in the narrative this
Right.
race was taking
Yeah.
place. Like, is this going to be his breakout win, or
Yeah.
is this
Right.
going
Or
to
is this
be
going to be like a
his
Is it before or
heartbreaking
after the
defeat
montage?
beforehand?
right?
It's
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, this it was these elements that I enjoyed because, and they're kind of hard to talk about because that's what I was saying. These ideas appeared kind of in a paragraph by paragraph. There was a little idea, little idea, little idea, but the big one was really that he's within a story. He knows he's within a story, and he's trying to predict the outcome of that story based upon the elements he can observe and bet on the action for his own advantage, which
And
is
then
a
and
pretty
then
neat
get out of town
concept.
before the
And then get out,
excitement breaks out.
right?
Yeah.
Which basically, before the story really kicks into high gear, he doesn't want to
Excitement with
be there.
capital letters. Yeah.
He doesn't want to be there for the rising action to the climax. He just wants to be there for kind of that middle thing. He wants to bet on the pod race and win and get out before Darth Maul shows up to continue back to Patrick's. So
Before he comes into a spider creature, yes.
Right. So there's a lot of, like I was saying, there's a lot of ideas in this that I admired. A lot of interesting thought that went into it, but it's less a story and more an idea story, if that makes any sense. Okay, I've been talking for a minute, so I'll shut up now and figure out, let Katie take back over where we were at.
Hannah, did you want to jump in? I saw you unmuted.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to tell you guys my impressions. I play like 0 video games, none whatsoever. Okay,
Then you are the perfect person to comment and get
yes,
feedback on. Go for it.
The only games I play, I just have to tell you guys, are like the 1990s Mario games of the original Nintendo. So that's all I ever do, and I'm horrible at them, which is probably why I never moved on to any of them. So I actually really enjoyed this story, but so Katie knows this. I do enjoy writing, but I write a lot of poetry. And so I love, like abstract ideas, imagery, and things like that. So I really enjoyed this for that reason. But as someone who like doesn't play video games or anything like that, the whole time I was reading the story, I was trying to figure out, right? So we established this guy has special skills. So I was trying to figure out how those special skills translated into the story. So my thought was that this is some sort of traveler that can actually travel between universes and timelines. What, if you think about video games, I mean, like, we just watched a Lego movie, so in my head too, I was imagining like, here's Middle Zealand, and here's, like,
Sure,
going through different worlds, so he could jump in at whatever is going on in that world at that time. And so I don't know if it's like my inexperience with gaming or anything like that made me think this way, but in my head I had this whole like backstory designed about how he got there and why he was there. Yes, so I maybe elaborated.
It's not a bad analogy, though. It fits, even if the specifics of how it might function within a game is the same. It's almost like he's jumping between different games that have races, different universes, different realities.
Yes,
and going from there. So I mean, that totally functions.
Yeah.
You're barking up the right tree.
Oh God.
But can we talk about his use of the name of the gamer?
That was weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, clearly he's the gambler,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that one would make sense. So already the author is manipulating the reader into thinking either this is a gamer who is either enjoying the side quest, because this isn't a main storyline. So it's the person who's wanting to kind of fit in. Or I was thinking some other lit RPG trope of stuck in the matrix and can't get out and has to blend in, or the monsters will eat his face off. And when he dies in the game, he dies in real life. So it's a almost a cheap manipulative tactic here that I didn't appreciate, because that's not his name. We know he's not the gamer. He's not playing the game, and so it's not even like a name that he's given himself. I don't believe, because we're reading this as a
Did
third
he ever
person.
refer to himself as anything? Does anyone remember?
Do they introduce themselves? I
Um,
think it's just um
it is from his point of view until the point of view change, at which point it goes to the other guy.
mhm,
So you might argue that that is him thinking of himself that way. It's not a particularly deep point of view.
sure.
I don't know. I would have to look back through it to be confident whether or not he thought of himself as the gamer, or if it is a little bit further out narrator that's calling him that.
I think so.
And
Yeah,
he
he says I'm a gamer, and the other guy says I'm a racer.
yeah,
So that's how they introduce themselves
yeah.
as
Okay.
Well, maybe that is, but whoever is programming the main game is terrible at naming things. The capital Th's of this world.
it is interesting, and I didn't uh think about it that deeply.
Uh, so what now? Go back to what you just said, Practice. What was your
My side
heading
joke.
on that about the naming?
Oh, so it either makes you feel like this is an actual player
Hmm.
that is the gamer
Right, right,
input in
right.
here, or it's someone who's trapped in and it still has
Right, right.
agency and a soul outside the world, but is needing to not reveal himself. Matrix or dot hack slash sign, or however you're supposed to say anime titles that are weird.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree. I agree there. I'm not sure what the author's if the intention was deliberate misdirection, because I think it does become clear. How soon does it become clear that he's probably not a person in the sense that we are? Probably.
I don't know. I
I'm I'm,
think
tr- I'm trying to figure out about when the sense you start getting that he's also part of it.
When he buys the medallion, that's when I got it.
I didn't get that.
Okay.
Um,
I don't remember that if that was that part specifically.
It's when he's buying the medallion with the kid, and he's like,
Mhm.
I
Oh,
want to
okay,
buy
okay.
one souvenir to remind
Gotcha,
myself.
gotcha.
Wait, why does that make you guys think that he's not
The
like us?
For me it's earlier than that. It's earlier when he's talking with the kid, or the not the kid, the racer, I
Yeah, the
guess.
racer.
The other traveler.
Hmm.
Um it's when they start talking about, and this goes back.
This is like
Okay,
skipping like a
let's back
ton.
up.
Like-
Let's back way up if we're going to tell the story. So he talks to all the racers. He's talking to the one that he's optimistic is going to be the winner, and he hears that there's a stranger in town, and he goes, "Uh-oh," because he's genre savvy and he knows that the stranger in town is bad news for a race, right?
Well, and
So
for him too, like
yeah,
him
for him.
personally. Yeah.
Well, if later on, yeah, specifically, yeah, but
he's specifically thinking that he's going to be a wild card for the
right, that
race.
he's hard to predict.
Yeah.
So he asks around about where the stranger is at, and I guess the stranger is out at the start of the race location. Is where he was going to be.
Yeah, looking over
Mm-hmm.
the
Out over
race,
the
the
plain,
track.
right?
Sombre.
Uh, that was another interesting detail. Okay, here is the place for me that it became very clear that he was. So when he leaves out of town and he's crossing these plains and he's going to this mountain, right? And he talks about how The geography in this world is very deliberate. Where is this? I'm almost here. Um, uh, At first, the gamer had assumed that the mountain resulted from something akin to a divine lack of understanding of geography. Okay, and that divine is an important point there. Now he wasn't so sure. Knowledge gaps like that tended to be filled in unconsciously. That meant either this lone peak was tied up in important threads or it was intentionally engineered this way, likely both. So what you get from that is we know this is we know this is a game already at this point, right? We know this is an engineered world. And if he views the purpose of this mountain something divine related to it, then basically he's viewing whoever created this, whatever force created this, as so far above him. And that's the clue that he's part of it. He's an NPC, right? Because whoever
Okay.
created this world is something
So,
divine that either didn't know how geology works and puts this mountain out here in the middle of nowhere, or this mountain is very specific to the purpose of this world, and therefore that's why it's like that. Does that make
okay.
sense?
I had a different interpretation, but I see where you're coming from with so references to divinity. I moved away from game.
Okay.
I thought, okay, this is a game-like structure, right? There's things like music. But
Oh yeah, that was actually a great part. I love that.
I
I'm
liked
glad
that.
you mentioned that because we need to get back to that. Which definitely means it's a game.
I didn't assume that the divinity was referring to actual people who made the game.
Right.
I sort of moved away from that as my context for a setting, but you could be correct.
Right.
And I took it deeper and saying if this person is wanting to do the side quest first, he doesn't want to interact with the thing that you're supposed to kind of like go towards. And there's like the fog of war, and you like interact with it, and then it reveals more of the map to you. And so he's understanding that like in Fallout 3, there's a mega town that you can progress through, or you can do the main thing of like trying to save your father, and then you can't go back to that point. Well, before the updates, I went too far, and that's when I realized, oh, do every side quest possible in every Fallout game before even getting close to your main storyline. So I don't save my son. I don't save water and millions of lives of people. No, I am collecting bottle caps and making sure people know how to hunt super mutants down.
That is also how I play games.
But your point there is correct though, because he's made it. It's becoming clear by this point that even if you don't look at it as a game, if you look at it just as a story, as this is a character in a story, he knows that this mountain seems to be either a dumb accident or very important, and he doesn't want to necessarily be going to important things because that might wrap him up closer into the story.
Yeah, which is also why I was thinking that he's either the NPC who's wanting to stay away from the main quest.
And that's what I think. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think, and he is a side character who has somehow escaped his original story and is wandering through stories, doing his little thing that he does because he's a gambler. He does it. He shows up at races. It's okay. No one draws attention to this gambler because, of course, there's these gamblers. But he's trying to avoid the big things happening because then he might get in trouble and get swept into big events. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to get stuck going with Frodo, right? He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to end up going with Luke Skywalker. He really just wants to sit in the cantina and gamble across 1,000 different stories and fictions.
Yeah,
that's how I interpreted all this.
Yeah, and there's sort of two setting things. There's the immediate setting that he's in,
Right.
and then there's like this larger travelers oriented
Right.
world building.
Yeah, well, and he's still a age-old question of nature versus nurture. He is a gambler. He is gambling, but he knows that he's gambling and still does it for. I mean, maybe NPCs can succumb to hunger, but what's he doing it for? It just seems to be because that's what he's programmed to do. But since he has agency, he's able to manipulate small things in order to make the difference in the bet. You know, it's knowing that you know the roulette table will never come up on green, and so that greatly reduces your chance of a 50-50 for black or red. So you can manipulate it that way. Having a green or a double green on the roulette wheel like drastically reduces chances when you're playing the odds. So he's saying, tell me the odds. Always tell me the odds, so that he can manipulate just slightly for a payout for him to do his thing, to have him as an NPC feel a sense of accomplishment. But also, this world is pointless. We're all just ones and zeros, but not enough that he's going to climb the mountain to throw himself off.
I basically totally agree with you, Patrick, and this is very fair.
Okay,
so
good, great. We can end it here. Thanks for joining us.
Let's make note that Patrick does not have a crazy theory this time, but I'll go to say that I don't think that he knows that he's ones and zeros. I don't think that he knows that he's truly what his nature is. I think he just kind of accepted that this is kind of what he is. Does that make sense?
But it doesn't seem like he's like you know,
he knows functionally.
He's not leaping the two buildings like Neo, knowing like, do you believe that's air?
Right.
So him hearing music, or maybe understands that people can hear music, I think clues him into at least something. But it's not like
it's more like,
it's not like, oh, this world that I exist in has
it's more
song.
like Hannah was saying. To him, it's more like he's bouncing around a multiverse, and that this is just these constraints that make it a game, or just the nature of the universe as he perceives them. And the things, something above the games that designed it, to whoever designed this particular land with this mountain and put it in this spot, to him that's a divine force that he doesn't understand. And either divinity didn't understand geology, as he said, as understand basic geography, or there's a purpose that's there specifically, and that concerned him. So
I was disappointed. I'm a biology teacher. And so when I read about the trees, I was like, oh my goodness, I hope these trees come into the story somehow. And then I was really sad when I finished the story, and I was like, the trees are meaning.
So he eventually gets to the mountain, climbs up it, and there were trees up high, right?
Mm-hmm.
That didn't fit with the rest of the surrounding flora, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there wasn't any. There was just like ants on his way up. There wasn't really anything else. And then he got to the top, and there were trees.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
go ahead.
Well, and again, that comes back to, again, this is a purpose-created place. This isn't a natural place.
Or there was a bug in the system.
Fair enough. Either way. I mean, either way, it's not right. You know, and that is another clue that this isn't a naturally occurring world. It is a world that has been designed with purpose, even if this is this isn't an actual God with divine purpose that makes a rational natural world, but a human that makes some things irrational, possibly. You know, that's why I still think it's part of the game, is because in some ways the world is irrational, like those trees that you noticed.
Well, it's a placeholder. Yeah, it's clipping into the next system where you're not supposed to be.
Right. Well, or the art, the guy doing the art was like, that makes this place look pretty cool. But it's like, but that doesn't make any sense. But it looks kind of cool, so we're gonna go with it. It made it through the design process, and no one said, hey, this doesn't make sense. That wasn't the purpose. That wasn't the purpose of that place. The purpose of the place was for this cool place to launch the race. So they put trees there.
So starting at the beginning that we haven't got to.
I'm trying to catch up in my notes. Like,
Let's start at the end and work our way forward. Maybe.
Well,
maybe that'll work.
I mean, Patrick and I agree. So do we need your notes?
We got it all figured out. Take the night off.
So he goes up the mountain, meets this stranger, turns out to be another traveler.
Mm-hmm.
And we get kind of an info dump from here to the end of the story.
Mm-hmm.
But we also get a fumble. Like he's the driver, flyer, pilot,
Racer.
that
Was he a
guy.
racer?
Yeah, he's like got something that's really bad, but he fumbles it, which also made me think like, oh, he's interacting with another player character who doesn't want to be found out because it's against the rules of the game or
Right.
the Matrix, right?
Right.
Don't let the Matrix know that you're alive.
They're cheating. They don't want to know that they don't want to get caught that they have jumped the system somehow.
There's a lot of very, very intriguing elements that are thrown at you.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
the mentioning of the fact that there are authority figures that would interfere with the travelers' fun,
Right.
whatever they're doing.
They're just living their best life. They're just out living their best life to the limit of their programming.
Like the racer is like, yeah, I go to races and I race them. Like I can't win them because that would draw attention to myself.
Right.
But like I go and I race it.
Yeah.
And the gamer's like, I don't understand how that makes money.
Right, because that's what
yourself.
that's what he's supposed to do. Is he's a gambler, so he goes and he's like, I got to make money. The other guy's like, well, I got to race, but I can't win.
Well,
Really?
now wait a minute, because at one point, when the gamer is talking about or thinking about how he used to buy souvenirs at every location, he mentions how he didn't expect it to become a full-time money-making thing.
That's fair.
So it's very unclear how programmed he would be. And maybe that's why I didn't pick up on him not being like an actual he's not a playable. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. He's not a mate.
He doesn't fit in a box.
He doesn't, right? And that's what I was saying. That's why I kind of view him, even if like I said, if you don't use the idea of a game, he's like a side character that gets mentioned a couple of times in the narrative and never again. But he's jumping from book to book to book to further his existence and keep going before the book is shut and he's forgotten forever. Right? It's kind of the way that I imagined it. And
yeah,
I mean,
one of the characters at Mos Eisley's bar who has a name. You only find out about it because you bought the action figure.
But they all have names, right?
Yeah,
at this
because
point,
you bought the action figure. Because George Lucas is brilliant when it comes to
brilliant.
That. When it comes to that,
I'm definitely merchandising if I ever get big and with my books.
No, you got to get not big, and then you bank on your third movie.
Why wouldn't you merchandise? They're so much fun.
I want my own toys. That's why. That's why I would merchandise.
Yep.
But yeah, so you look across the bar. He's one of those characters. Oh, I bet you he's cool. Let me think of an entire backstory for him, and then George Lucas sues you for copyright infringement. But he's just a side piece. But he's not Boba Fett.
Okay, so
one of the things that's talked about is the importance of staying out of the spotlight.
Right.
Specifically, it mentions omnipotent tyrants and sort of the deity
and plural
aspect
too.
again.
So he uses they, their, all those good pronouns.
Okay, so The omnipotent tyrants, right? Where is that at? Where is that spot?
Let me see if
Uh,
I can find it.
yeah, I'm trying to find it here real quick because that's important. Hey, Katie, I thought you were supposed to make notes.
Uh, yes, but I didn't use page numbers or anything
Oh
because
Should be
yeah.
evident. All it takes for some omnipotent tyrant to take notice of you, and before you know it, you're charging into a volcanic wasteland to recycle haunted jewelry, marching to
Okay.
the beat of someone else's divine drum.
Okay. So
yes.
the omnipotent tyrants and their divine drum are actual humans playing the game. Somehow or another, if you become the focus of attention, you become the whatever, you are played by one of the characters through the plot and you're charging into battle against your will. That is who the omnipotent tyrants
Mhm.
are people playing the
Ah,
game.
okay. So this is not a game where you have a player character. You're saying it's like a game where you click your guy and make him move.
Maybe
Well,
that's not really very
yeah.
clear how this functions. Like, it's not clear that this is a game that's going on all the time, or if it's like a stage play that somebody looks in at the right moment and becomes this story
Sure.
that unfolds. It's the exact nature of it is very unclear. But I'm almost 100% positive that the omnipotent tyrants that can make you move to their divine drum is a human player playing as these characters. And because why else would he be? What is it? What did it say?
Charging
Charging
with
into a volcanic wasteland to recycle haunted jewelry. So the end
Exactly.
thing. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
that's wonderful.
Yeah, right. Because he doesn't want to become the center of attention. He's an NPC in the game, and why else would he, unless he became basically a player control
Hmm.
character?
He doesn't know what happens when you die.
It's a good question. Don't know here. Have no idea.
Oh, I just came across something um while I was looking at this. He does mention uh wanting to avoid having his suspension of disbelief shattered
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
when he's looking at the gliders. Um,
Right, because he's looking at he mentions looking at the gliders and that they're not, they don't, they wouldn't work really. They're fantastical. They don't work according to physics.
yeah,
And again,
yeah.
that's
The
more
ga
hint very early that it's a game because it wasn't a real aeronautical engineer that that made and modeled these things and put them in,
right.
but
But
a
somehow
non-expert.
he is aware of having his suspension of disbelief.
True, true. So he's aware to some extent that this is, again, he's aware that
It's
there's a
really
lot of things that he's aware of, that these are these worlds are what's the best way to,
He's
they're
Cypher. He
they're
he
they're
wants to eat the steak, knowing
they're
that it's
staged.
fake.
He knows that there's stage props. He knows in on some level that the cityscape is just a cardboard facade, right? Including those gliders. He so he recognizes that that's not how physics work. That wouldn't really fly. It's fantastical, but this is my life and I'm living this life and this is the only life I live. So darn it, I'm going to believe that those things can fly and still bet on them and live my life. I don't know. That's the best I got there. You're living the life you're given, I guess, in his case.
Nietzsche wasn't programmed into him, or Camus.
So somewhere around the same area, there was a neat little world building thing. This is one of those things that just made you go, "Oh, that's a cool idea," and in a bigger story, it'd be expanded upon. Katie's already mentioned it once or twice, but the fact that the second traveler he meets, the racer, can hear music. Okay,
It's a nice.
so there's this gift that these travelers have that seems to be something about the way that, okay, You're right. Something about the way they can see through the matrix, to go back to some things Patrick has been doing.
I'm okay with
So
drawing references, but you don't remember those.
yep. So the racer can hear background music. Okay. Now, in a big open world game like this, different areas have different music. There's your city music, and then your music in the plains and the mountain is going to have something. And he mentions that how he knew that the gamer was coming was because the music changed, because it's a story. And when something important is about to happen, the music changes. So he can hear the music playing in his head, which is really just this weirdly amazing idea. It's like the self-aware character in a movie that's aware of the soundtrack. It's like they would be, you know, basically able to see the future in some ways because they're hearing this outside reality that's giving them these big clues onto the tension. It's like, no, I'm not going to go into that building because I'm about to get stabbed because of the music I'm hearing. It's like, let's not do that.
I think the race
Not a
is
useless superpower is all I'm saying. Not a useless superpower.
I think it's way, way cooler than the gamers, but
Yes.
also the gamers is too vague.
Yeah,
don't
it
split the
is.
party. Don't pee in the holy water. Don't go towards the sound of music. Okay, there's our thing for the story.
So what was the gamers? How did he describe it?
Like you can see the flame. I can see qualities, especially the flame.
Right.
So here it's like a heroism element because the
Right.
kid who is going to win the race had it.
So basically he has his ability is like being trope savvy and knowing what and why things are going to happen. It's like he's got that feeling, which I mean that's good for gambling.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is a little harder to immediately define, and that was something that I thought about would be interesting over a much longer story to explore.
Yeah.
Because that way of seeing through, it's almost like he can and perceive narrative purpose. So a character that can perceive narrative purpose, that's an interesting idea.
It is.
But
Yeah.
this isn't really the length of story that would take to really unpack that into its full potential, really. But that's okay.
Yeah.
But that's part of what made this story interesting. Was again, it's not about the plot. It was just there were lots of little ideas that made you go, "That's interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting."
I'm sitting where Patrick usually is. I'm like, I need more. This is not enough. I like what I'm reading, but there's not enough here.
Someone needs to spoon feed Katie this time. Oh. How the table turns have turntabled.
So the conversation becomes about avoiding the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
But also not using like keywords, because he like shushes them at one point in time to be like, no, don't even say that.
Right.
They could be listening to that.
Okay. So so after fighting, they start getting along, they start talking, and then we get to this. They're basically the gambler's like giving advice to the kid, right, or to the racer, who seems a lot more naive and younger. And so, did you figure out what was going to happen? Did you understand? Okay, so it goes to this point of view change, right? Did you know what the point of view change signified?
It pissed me off.
Oh no, it's so important to the story though. As soon as the point of view change,
it's so clumsily done. It happens really, really.
Do you know why? Do you know? But it's so important, even if it's clumsily done.
No.
Why? What does it mean? What is this? Why is the point of view change?
It changes because he is trying to leave the narrative, right? Like that he is doing it on purpose.
It's yes, but it's more to it than that. It's not just that the gamer is leaving the narrative because he's escaping, but the racer has become important on accident because this older guy has taken the younger guy under his wing in kind of this mentorship scenario. And when you're the mentee taken under the wing by the older guy, you've got a story to fulfill. And so he suddenly starts having this purpose within the story, and the story becomes about him. And the ending is he turns around and the gamer has disappeared because the story is not about the gamer anymore. It's about the racer who has become important and is in danger of becoming a part of the narrative.
Yes, and
that's like the whole structure of the story. That's the whole point of the story. Is that
the lightsaber?
That's the whole point of the story. Is the point of view change?
I'm going to argue with you about
that was why he did it. That's the whole story.
It's done too abruptly. It's done too clumsily. And I hate POV changes. I hate them. And mid-narrative, it drives me absolutely crazy.
But that's the point. That's the whole point.
No.
Yes.
It would work. It would work so much better if it was done smoothly. Okay. Here's the problem. The story isn't about the racer.
Yes, it is, though.
No, it's not.
Immediately, the story is not about the racer.
The gamer.
Not anymore.
The story he escapes is this story. When he leaves, the story ends. The racer never becomes the main character.
I think this story was a little too experimental for Katie.
The ending is so mad.
Oh, that's the best part when you realize
as soon as the POV change happened, I was like, oh no, wait a minute. Because all of the promises that the story started with are just dropped. All of them.
What promises?
Okay,
I care about the character.
Do you want are you wanting to know if he bets right on the race? I mean, he probably almost always bets right on the race, and he's going to keep doing it across 1,000 more games.
No, I was okay. So narratively, right? Narratively, I was promised excitement. I was not ever given excitement.
When were you promised excitement?
Over and over and over again, he says things are going too smoothly and things are too dull and too mundane, and there is going to be excitement that breaks. And it never happened.
Well, look, that's because he manages to get out of it, and he duped the kid and becoming important, and next thing he know, the 8-year-old down the street is probably playing him in a racing game.
Or the traveler got selected by the tyrants of above, and he's out of there because he's suddenly become a prominent main character.
Not the gamer, the racer. That's what I'm saying.
Gamer.
No, he's gone.
No,
he's too good for that.
The gamer becomes the playable character.
No. He escaped.
He's now being played.
No, he escaped. He's too good for that. That's the whole point. He's the seasoned gambler, and he has this meeting with this kid. He has this meeting of destiny, and he knows it's trouble, that one of them is in danger. So he
chance encounter,
which is important to plots. Chance encounters are always important. So he sets the kid up to take the fall, disappears, the point of view changes to the racer, and suddenly the racer is the character. It's whole thing is
fabulous
great.
idea. It's a fabulous idea. I hate it as a story. Okay, 3 promises: excitement, cool world building around the traveler's idea, and then a character who might get involved in spite of misgivings. And none of that plans out. None of it.
I think the world building pans out. I think it does, because so much of it is built around this idea of avoiding attention. And so when he pulls this rug pull on this kid and basically sets him up to be the center of attention, it works. See, it's a great idea. I like it.
It's a great idea.
It's not fulfilling as a story because it's not that kind of story. It's not that kind of story at all. But it's more of it's an aha, you go, I see what you did there. That was clever, you sly dog.
It's an M. Night Shyamalan aha.
Yeah, It is. And sometimes that kind of story is frustrating, which is
It's
why I enjoy it better in a short story than I do in a 2 hour movie. It can be
well,
very
and with less
frustrating in a
Shyamalan
2 hour movie.
dialogue. So he didn't have
Yeah.
that. Oh,
Yeah,
have you
no,
ever
I
tried a hot
agree.
dog before? Hot dog.
That kind of rug pull in longer fiction is not cool. But I think that short stories are the place to do that kind of really experimental, borderline frustrating narrative that makes you go, "Oh, okay, I see what you did there. That was sly."
It's a well done. I agree. It's a very interesting idea.
It's too meta.
I I didn't like it. And
Yeah.
part of it too is that I didn't like the gamer. So as a character, he did not I did not I did not want him to escape, right? Because I didn't understand enough of the world building to understand why he needed to, and I didn't like him panning it off, pawning it off. I mean, like on the kid, like this.
Look, at the
He was a
very least,
coward.
the kid is probably now going to get to win races when the 8-year-old down the street is
Crashing him
wrecking
into the
people
side of the
online.
mountain 82 times.
And
Yes.
he'll get to win races now, probably.
Yeah. Therefore, there's no reason to care because death doesn't even matter.
You
Yeah,
don't know that.
we can't even approach if death exists in any sense for these guys. We didn't get it. We didn't get that far into the world building.
Well, the gamer has a sense of prolonging his life, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but
I got the sense that for him prolonging his life was more prolonging his independence than continuing
sure.
existence, right?
Because he might lose his independence.
Right. He might basically lose his agency.
He'll have to go through the update.
But like as a person who doesn't necessarily believe a whole lot in free will, like I was not really impressed by that as a motive. Like I
I mean, can you argue that he has any agency even as he exists, or is it just the illusion of it, until someone looks his way? We're working in this story a couple orders of creation beneath God and humanity in this case. So I'm not sure if that's meant to be applied.
At least two
way.
levels, right? Because we're reading a story about somebody who has developed a game and a character who's in that game. So we're at least two standard deviations away. So we've created the VCR to the CD, and we put it in Grandma's CD player.
I do not understand that analogy, but that is okay.
Oh,
we
never
will.
copied. You never copied like different versions to see how it degrades and watch that.
So we're talking about adding more JPEG at this point.
Well, every time you make a copy, it degrades no matter how you transfer it. So we're just getting that level of story. But the fact that it changes from the story of the gamer to then, oh no, we tricked you. It's actually a story about this other guy.
It really
now,
is still
now you're operating within the book story and not the game story.
Right. And the story of the short story is entirely about the gamer, right? It is about his life, his existence, and how he makes this escape out of
Except
this
when they
tricky
use
situation.
the literary nature of the POV change to change it on you.
Right, but within the context of what the story is doing within that world, it serves a very important function because we're literally seeing the focus of the story shift. Now, really, it's still about the gamer, even if there's this temporary shift in perspective that makes you go, oh, wait a second, that this is bad for this kid. The point of view is shifted.
all right.
The
other
battle line shifted. The battle line shifted between Katie and I to Patrick and I.
I don't know.
We were in such agreement at the beginning. we were Germany and Russia, and I'll be Russia. You can be Germany.
I don't know.
That's very kind of you to offer her to be Germany.
Yes. It's almost winter, so just don't do anything rash.
Oh.
I don't know. I didn't appreciate the main character abandoning the story. That it just bothered me, and
But the
I
main character abandoning the story is the story. That's my final say on that. That is the story, is him
This is
abandoning the
not
story.
Never Ending Story, though. This
but I
is the video game Never Ending Story that Atreyu is reading in the book Sebastian is reading.
I disagree, right? Like there's narratively it starts as a different story and then switches halfway through.
So
He needs to break the fourth wall like once. He needs to like turn at the reader and go, "Can you believe this guy?" It's like, oh, okay.
so I guess what I would make in that argument, in to what you're saying, is that for you, you were more interested in the original perception of normalcy versus the derailment of what happens because of this chance meeting. Where you wanted to follow the gamer through an entire cycle of his come through, bet on the action, and then leave in his own method rather than, because it
Not
like
necessarily.
uses like the first half of the story is to set up the basic normalcy, and then the second half is setting up the derailment of this normal
So
cycle.
at the end, switch and say, boy, I'm glad I got out of there and left the kid alone to be the main character of the story. So long, suckers. And then, all right, maybe I'll have a bit more respect for him.
I want I wanted more.
It
Let's put it that
look
way.
look.
If I had more context, right?
Hmm.
And not just snippets of information related to the travelers.
The info dump at the end does so much work.
That's
So
what I'm
much of it.
saying.
Yeah.
I and the I for me, the promised excitement that doesn't happen is a real kicker.
I guess I didn't feel that promise. I'm gonna say that as I did not feel any particular promise of excitement. He's a gambler. The whole time he's talking about avoiding excitement, and that's like, so you're saying because he tries to avoid it, that's why you felt it was promised?
The gamer
Because
has
he was
frequented dull locales in the past, but rarely so mundane as this. This was dangerous. In his profession, it was almost guaranteed that something exciting would happen about the
something,
same time that he carried out his business.
and that exciting thing was him becoming in danger of becoming the narrative.
The exciting thing was a conversation.
Yes,
And it wasn't even
because the worst thing that could happen to him was becoming the main character and being the narrative.
But
so this chance
narratively,
meeting
I don't
was
understand that, right? Like until two-thirds of the way through the story when he's like explaining it. I agree it's a fabulous idea.
right.
I like a lot of the elements. So much so that it kind of irritates me that he's not the right kind of traveler for anything, apparently, except gambling. But I didn't like it.
I'm glad he didn't like push the kid out of the way and then he's like, I saved him from being the main character. And then he like sacrifices himself because I would have hated that even more. So at least it didn't do that.
He'd been like Obi-Wan facing down Darth Vader and letting Luke escape.
Yeah, except Obi-Wan had never met Luke Skywalker and didn't care anything about what was happening over there.
It was basically two guys in the cantina getting over a random fight just in case, as the camera's panning towards them on who's going to end up in the camera, and the one guy ducks under the table at the last second.
Hey, remember when lightsabers cut off limbs fully, completely, except for the cantina when it just bled everywhere, and then no one ever talked about that ever again?
Yeah. Look, Katie, it is a gimmick story. And a
Yes.
gimmick story is you're either going to accept the gimmick or you're not. And it's totally fair that you don't accept the gimmick, because that really is when you brought up M. Night
Shyamalan.
Shyamalan. I don't know.
Shyamalan.
That's really how his movies are too, right? And it was a good comparison, is that his movies are usually gimmick movies, right? Either the gimmick clicks with you and you're like, oh, that was cool, or you hate it and you really talk bad about him until the next movie of his that you see, right? It's like
Yeah.
people either really like The Village and its twist, or they despise the movie with every passion that they have, right? There's no in between. And I think a gimmick short story is like that. You were trying to send it to Hannah.
I was.
I'll shut up now.
I was just going to ask Hannah if
I have
she liked
passions.
if she liked the gimmick.
Break the tie.
Well, okay, so I'll tell you guys what I thought. So I had absolutely no inclination in my head whatsoever that this had anything to do with video games. And actually, since joining the Discord group, I had to look up what lit RPG was because I had no idea. So
Sorry.
my life involved that research too. So now, now that I actually understand where the story's coming from, I think it's kind of lame. Because so I liked the air of mystery, right? I read it and had no idea what was actually going on. So
Sure.
I actually liked the air, the air of mystery that surrounded it, because we get this character, like the exposition is given to us bit by bit, which I really enjoy in a story, even a short one like this. So when he just leaves at the end, to me, it was like, well, this fits the air of mystery that they established at the beginning.
Sure.
Right. And that goes back to my like traveler world hopping theory, because then he's just on to the next place and something else will happen there. But now that I know.
But that's still right. That's not wrong.
That's true.
That's true. Really not wrong in one sense.
Yeah. I think for me, though, knowing he's not an actual person doesn't make it as exciting, because I was like, well, if he has his own ideas about where he wants to go next, wouldn't that be cool?
He might.
Like, what if he's going to visit another world? I don't know.
and he might.
Yeah.
We don't quite really fully. He seems to understand. Like, one of the things that he judged in this world was how weird the light was. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like a single sun. It was like these three separate light sources that just dimmed and went out. And he judged that as very strange and odd, which of course it is, right?
Why would that be? Because he's programmed with the idea of the sun in his mind.
Well, no, he's been to a bunch of different worlds, and that's not how suns work, right? He's used to seeing suns go across the sky, probably.
That's how suns work in this world.
Well, right, but he got to this one and he's like, this is weird. Right. He's like, this doesn't match the patterns.
Someone who's using 3 light sources that are boring instead of a single light source. A lens flare that happens off the cornea of the eye for no reason.
And then the moon, the night light was like a diamond shaped too.
Oh yeah.
It was like people being weird for the sake of being weird.
It'd be cool if the moon was like a diamond.
It's like a
okay, I'm actually getting another theory about a detail of this world now that you guys are saying this. I think there might be some details that he's like in a not finished world. Because these generic light points are set up just to be light. There's some other things that we almost seemed unfinished that we were talking about at some times, and I wonder some of the places he was talking about the genericness of the naming, like there was the Northwest Mountains and the plains and the mountain and things like that. So it's almost like there's a lot of placeholders in this world, including the lighting rig that they have set up to light up this three-dimensional space.
That could be.
And
thinking about
the other detail,
David's light sources for his like spaceships.
Yeah. And for instance, like how the mountain, how there was like no vegetation and there was only ants. or something like that, right? There was
Yeah.
something else that seemed very clearly unfinished. So it's like he was in an in development world or not. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know, but that just seems like there's a few things now that somebody said something a minute ago while I was muted and getting a drink that made me just kind of start thinking about that. I don't know. I'd be curious if the I don't know. I'm just thinking. maybe doesn't really matter in the long run, but it would just be another little detail in of the world. Uh, doesn't change the gimmick and Katie's undying hatred of it.
I'm sorry.
When you're
That's
done,
okay.
I
This was
came away
fun.
with this very intense feeling for
This
the
was-
first time for this anthology. I was like,
Oh. Who wrote this? Are they going to see this and their heart is going to be
Nathan
absolutely
Carnes.
broken that the
So,
Katie of
but
Periapsis Press.
here's my great thing that I love about this, and something that Katie has done is we've talked about the story. We might not even like it, but we've talked for however long
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
story. So
Well,
like
that's what I'm saying is it's loaded with
like
ideas.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't go to like the public library and do a book review on this, but it's neat to kind of do this at least, and like even if we don't really like it, it's still fun to talk about it at this length, and it's not just like boring, dull, turn the page. I didn't really like this, so and maybe that's just the company I keep, and you guys allow me to record you and
well, and
use your screen time.
As Patrick has said several times, they didn't hate me, right? Like
Right.
it was a nice story. And like we've said, right? It had some really, really cool ideas. A lot of cool ideas. I just didn't like the twist.
I, I saw the twist coming, so I think I probably appreciated it. As soon as that point of view changed, I was like, that's clever.
I saw it coming as he's talking. I'm becoming more and more certain. Like, don't you do that. Don't you dare. What are you? You are my main character.
So is this being then written
I'm
for a particular audience that it's being written for, and like so someone who doesn't have gaming experience or maybe sci-fi novel experience or something along those lines, which might be difficult to put yourself in that perspective of like the editor, because your whole thing is like putting a whole bunch of space themes in here on purpose. But I don't think anyone's going to pick up that story who doesn't have those cues to look out for and be like, the change in character is like the thing that I'm supposed to. It's just like, no, the traveler disappears or the gamer disappears, and you're like, all right, and then like that's it.
I will say that of all the stories in this anthology so far, this is absolutely the one where you're most likely to miss the point and be lost. You know, without some pieces of in knowledge, probably.
It could be.
Right. See, even without game experience, Hannah still put together a lot, some of the multiversal type aspects and some of those things. And even without seeing it as a game, I think if you realize in a way that somehow or another they're fictional characters, somehow they're fictional and a little more two-dimensional than a full real person, you can probably put together some of the pieces about the becoming the plot and the threads and avoiding the plot and things like that. But yeah, there's definitely a little more in knowledge, I think, required on this one. Definitely more likely you're going to finish it and go, well, that was weird.
I have a question for you guys. So I don't know how well this relates to what we're talking about, but there was at one point in the story that he mentioned karma. And it's, I don't know if you guys caught that, but I think that's really interesting in light of what we're talking about. Like people designing a game and building a world. And then someone mentions karma. And I was like, I don't know about that.
So Patrick, you want to take this way? What was probably going on here?
I got to remember. The gamer almost played along with the whole arrest thing just for kicks. Not worth the bad karma though. Oh,
Mhm.
so like he would draw attention. So like this is the dark side points, right? Or the bad karma from Fallout 3.
So in some cases, some games that allow you some freedom of choice to how you progress the plot, Hannah, there are some that will give you good guy routes or bad guy routes.
Oh,
And
okay.
there and so in this case, the idea is, obviously when you're playing a game and you're taking pre-recorded paths, right? So when
Mhm.
you're doing something, it's probably adding points to a number behind you that says you've done this much good guy stuff or this much bad guy stuff. And they're is Fallout actually use the phrase karma?
Yeah,
Is actually
Fallout
karma
uses
in
karma.
Fallout? Yeah,
Yeah.
I played
Paragon or Renegade for Mass Effect.
right.
Witcher doesn't use it at all. Star
Dark
Wars uses
side of the
light
force,
side,
large
dark
side of
side.
the force, right? So a
Yeah.
game that has a narrative story that allows you some agency to choose one side or the other. That's
One dark side
probably
point, you have to start over from your last save, and hopefully you save often, or you got to go back a while.
so. If you
Uh,
run around town kicking all the kittens, then you're going to be collecting those dark side points, and your eyes are going to turn yellow by the end of the story, right? So
And
that's probably the reference that's being made there.
you might have a bounty on your
Okay.
head, and
Still
attract.
something programmed within the game,
Mhm.
There,
right?
Yes.
the
And
other
Okay.
way
karma
that you
being the
could look at
person.
it is uh just kind of in a generic way that people use the word karma.
It
Mhm.
works.
Sort of talking in a um, kind of the opposite way where he took on the mentor role and thereby stepped out of the
Mm.
main character role. If he took on a lawman persona, like that's not necessarily a better way to get out of the spotlight.
You went back to the main menu.
Mhm.
The choice was he made no choice.
Which is a choice.
Oh, now we're speaking my books behind me language here.
Sorry. I'm, I'm a teacher, so whatever. I'm used to
Only
bantering
a
with
Sith
students.
deals in absolutes.
Okay, well, thanks, you guys. That's really helpful. Because I feel like the writer of the story spent time building up the fact that someone else has made this world. And so maybe in my head, I think of karma as being something random or chaotic. And so it didn't those two didn't make sense to me. If you're talking about someone building a world that has purpose, then you throw karma in there. But again, when you think about it in the gaming sense, it makes
Right.
sense because what you choose will come back to you, and that's
Right.
kind of the idea. Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're living in
That's
someone
great.
else's narrative, so
Mhm.
actions have expected consequences, or they have consequences one way or the other because it's a narrative.
Mhm.
It's not the real world,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true.
which isn't to say
Mm.
our world doesn't have a narrative and narratives, but I am not some raging nihilist, but I'm just saying we don't have access to seeing the whole narrative and thus can judge it appropriately. So let me fix that
Hmm.
before I get in
Yeah.
trouble. There
House
is a
comes
narrative.
down. Yeah.
There is a narrative. We just don't get to see it. Yeah.
It's so interesting too, because I think that goes back to the layers of characters we were talking about. Maybe not only are there layers of characters, like there's God and there's us, and then there's this character in the game, but there's also layers of narrative. There's God's overarching narrative, there's our little narratives, and
Right.
within our little narratives, there's little narratives.
Well, that starts, that goes to no one has mentioned Tolkien, so I have to mention Tolkien.
Oh, he did it.
So, that goes into Tolkien's very big the philosophy of the sub-creator.
Mm-hmm.
That one of the ways in which we are made in the image of God is that God is a creator, and so we have this natural tendency to want to be creators as well. And while we cannot create ex nihilo, we can create with things from the matter of this world, but we can also create things out of mere thought that don't exist in any other way. So then you get to the question is, can the fictional characters that we create, and what level do they exist, and can they create more characters at a lower down, less resolution layer of reality? I have thought about stories like that. It's like
Have any of you read The Great Good Thing?
the great good thing. The great
Mm.
good thing. That sounds familiar. I haven't read it, but that title sounds familiar.
So it's I have it on my shelf. Um, it's a story about the characters in like a picture book, and they sort of live their own lives until someone opens the book, and then they have to
Mm.
get into position and do the
Oh.
story. Um,
Has anyone read
but
is
it's
it
it's a novel, so things happen
right, right.
beyond that, of course.
That's a lot like, has anyone ever read Jasper Ford's Thursday Next
Yes, those are
novels?
fantastic.
So you'd probably like them, Katie. I really think you would. It's
Hmm.
it's I hear that Jasper Ford has been kind of kicked out of Trad Pub too. So you might like it there. But so it takes place in this weird alternate UK where literature is like king, and like people are like trading like original manuscripts of Shelley's and all this stuff. But it eventually goes to that somebody has entered the manuscript of Jane Eyre and
Hmm.
murdered one of the characters, correct? Or kidnapped the character. I can't remember, but basically,
Kidnapped.
because it was the original written manuscript, it changes all the other ones.
Oh no.
And
Hmm.
so it's like she's like a literary detective, and she eventually has to fix things, but it just gets, as it goes on, it gets wilder and wilder with its ideas of entering fiction and
Hmm.
some of that stuff. It's a lot of fun.
It
It's
is.
a lot of fun.
I'll have to write
And I
that
will
down.
never forget reverse deficit engineering. It's basically it's basically using a technology in the good faith that someday somebody will invent it. So we just go ahead and start using it.
Very nice.
That's Terminator philosophy. No.
Right. And it's time travel is what they've been using on the good faith that somebody will invent it. And so the time traveling agency has been quietly scouring all of time, and they're running out of time, and they're about to discover that no one will ever invent time travel, in which case their entire past and history of time travel will cease to exist when they prove that it doesn't ever get invented. It's really funny.
Is this Douglas
Mhm.
Adams again?
It's got some of that humor. It's really funny. But the way it is very literature savvy. It is so lit savvy. Like someone that deeply loves all these old
Hmm.
dead guy stories. So
Yes.
anyway, bit of a digression. But when we're talking about layers of fiction and layers of reality and treating fiction as real characters, there's that same idea that you mentioned in the Great Good Thing, and that the stories happen, but they're kind of like plays, and when no one is reading it, the characters can relax.
Yeah,
And then
do
when
their own
someone
thing.
is reading it, it's like a play taking place that they have to play out their parts.
Yeah.
So
And in the Thursday Next novels, they make a big deal about that too. I think there's a scene where Mr. Rochester is like, "Well, this has been fun, but I gotta go and be at this burning building." So they do
yeah.
a good job of like making it really humorous, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, it was really funny.
Hmm.
Oh, so you're saying that Tolkien is Jesus then?
Oh,
Okay, gotcha. Sorry, if you're gonna bring up Tolkien, I'm gonna make my one joke. Sure, he'll appreciate that. Good job, Michael.
I'm not even going to respond.
All right. Uh, so yeah, uh, this story was frustrating to me, but there were a lot of things that I enjoyed about it. So I I don't recommend skipping this one. I think that you should read it. Be frustrated with me.
Find 4 good friends and discuss it.
Excellent advice. Do you guys have anything you want to wrap up with regarding this, or?
I think we beat this horse dead.
All right. We encourage you to buy The Silence of Starsong magazine. I haven't read anything else by Nathan Carnes, but if this sounded interesting to you, we encourage you to explore other stuff that he's written. And again, if you guys are interested in joining us, just reach out to me. We'd love to have you. Otherwise, thank you to Patrick, Michael, and Hannah, and to you guys for watching. Please leave a comment, like, subscribe. All right. Have a great day.